evening and welcome again to our weekly stopping, reflecting and heart-to-heart connecting. I've been so aware this week of how in lockdown it's a time in which so much is exposed on a personal level, a societal and a global level. It's not that we didn't know those things before, it's just that it was much easier to paper over them. And now they're here. And one of the things that has really come to the fore for me this week is this whole thing about knowledge versus knowing. I know that in our society, it's perhaps conscious or unconscious, but certainly some of us will have grown up with that phrase about knowledge is power. And yes, there's a certain truth in that. There are aspects of our lives where it really is helpful to have knowledge. It can open doors in so many ways. But I wonder if we have perhaps equated this with the human mind and given power to the human mind that has perhaps given us some aberrant thinking about that we can control the world, maybe even the universe. So, what happens when we don't know? What happens like now when we're talking about post-COVID-19 and we don't know what the future holds for us? We can make some sort of educated guesses, but do we really know? Now, for some of us, that not knowing is very uncomfortable, it's unpalatable, it's anxious making. For other people, any form of unknownness like this is exciting. It's an adventure, it's a pioneering experience, a challenge to go out and conquer the unknown. But let's go back to this, I don't know, it's almost part of our collective consciousness that knowledge is power. And again, it's when we make that absolute that we start unraveling a little bit. Now, we do know in certain contexts this has become quite negative when we know something about somebody that is perhaps unsavory and that gives us a hold over the person. But like all knowledge, it's neutral until we invest in it some sort of quality or some sort of value. But what happens when our knowledge or sufficient knowledge isn't available, like now, for the future? What happens when our minds can no longer provide information, facts, answers, solution? What happens when suddenly we're needing to own ignorance, when we're needing to simply say our intellect is not enough? It can create such feelings of disempowerment, can't it? And powerlessness, as if there's something deficient in us. Well, we can start trying to address it. We can invent trends. We can react by trying to force some sort of outcome out of sheer desperation. But in the midst of this, deep down, we know that we don't know. And what are the emotions that evokes and provokes in us? Because that is part of the fallout, I suspect, that is beginning to emerge already. And it's influencing, often very negatively, our relationships. It's showing up the cracks because we knew how to deal with things before. Now we don't. And maybe this is where, as Christians, we have something profound and powerful, but in a different form of power, to offer to the world. Now, I'm not a guru on this. I don't in any way claim to understand it myself, because understanding, once again, implies some sort of mental activity, something where we rely on the mind and the intellect. And this isn't this. This is about spiritual unknowing, which is different from not knowing. I mean, firstly, what we need to understand is that when we go into spiritual unknowing, it's actually a huge relief, because it suddenly doesn't depend on my abilities. In fact, it doesn't depend on any human being's abilities. We don't need to rely on our intellect, on any kind of prowess of any kind. We don't have to invent a crystal ball, be it some sort of predictive index on a computer or something that can look into the future. It is, in spiritual unknowing, perfectly fine to say, I don't know. It's not bound by a reliance on any of our resources of any kind. And the spirituality of unknowing raises a very robust question. And the question is, ultimately, in whom, in what is my indelible, unfaltering trust? Now, that also presupposes that you have a clear understanding of what trust is, that I understand what I mean, and maybe this is something that each of us needs to unpack for ourselves. But in this aspect of spirituality, this kind of trust is an invitation to immersing, a full immersion, a sinking into God, without any loss of consciousness of an awareness of self. It's not that. Nor is it an abdication from life, nor an avoidance of any responsibility. It goes beyond that. It's saying there is something more than the conscious mind. There is something bigger. And when we live in harmony with the union in the divine, it frees us to go beyond the time-space continuum. It frees us from attachments to solutions, to answers, to outcomes that are quantifiable and knowable. It even allows us to be able to admit that we have expectations about God. We have expectations perhaps in the particular way in which God is going to respond, or the preconceived ideas and attachments to what that outcome is going to look like. It's a liberation from that. We don't need to have that anymore. So how do we begin to merge into this unknowing? Meditation is wonderful. Contemplation, centering prayer. And we don't have sufficient time to unpack all of that, but go and research that. Because as we become, as our being is in the being of God, it actually doesn't matter what the future holds. Because deep down, we will know who holds the future, and that we have chosen to be embedded in this divine, loving being. And in a strange way, but a very organically real way, that is sufficient. Thank you. Thank you for joining me this evening. And thank you for letting me explore or tentatively dip my toes into something that is just beginning to tickle my mind. And hopefully will also create some sort of, I don't know, taste for exploring this for yourself. Good night, God bless, and sleep in peace.